Here's your smart fact of the day. In academic circles, we talk about something called as a hypothesis. Now, before you suddenly get scared about whether, oh my God, this professor is going to talk about some strange technical term, a hypothesis is nothing but a testable statement, right? Something that you can test out. Like, okay, X leads to Y or something like that. And before I get too geeky, let me also say that an hypothesis essentially something which is an educated guess. It is an assumption. And hey, welcome to Smarter with Sid. And in today's episode, what I want to do is figure out how can we use assumptions or the dependence on assumptions and the impact that assumptions have on us, our work, our careers, our projects, or even our relationships. And is there a way in which we can deal with them better than the way in which we are dealing with them right now? So let's go. So what's the context for this particular episode? We do this a lot of times, right? So when we have a fantastic idea, we take that idea for granted and we don't really say, okay, I'm assuming a lot of things which will need to work in order for this idea to work. The idea could be about a new book maybe, or it could be about a new creative thought that you have, or it might be about a project. It might even be about a building, or it might be about relationships, or it might be about, winning some sales deal. So many different times in life, we are continuously working on assumptions. Now, if we don't work on assumptions, we will be stuck if we keep testing out all the thoughts that go in our head, to be honest, and we try to test these things out and say, oh, these are just assumptions and we will get into analysis paralysis. And of course, that is not ideal, right? Analysis paralysis is certainly not ideal. But then which assumptions would you know to test, and which assumptions would you know to leave alone? So this question has vexed me all my life, because if you're in a creative endeavor or if you're in a pursuit which is kind of abstract, it's not like, oh, I will build this house and therefore I need these many bricks. It's perhaps has many factors which go beyond your control. Perhaps it's dependent on people and stuff like that. And this is where I found something called the business model canvas very, very useful. So the business model canvas is a framework that allows you to actually at least identify your assumptions for any venture that you're starting. Now, of course, this may not be necessarily useful when you're trying to make assumptions about relationships, or when you're trying to make any assumptions about any other things which are not related to a venture. But there is an overall learning or a principle that I wanted to share. So first, let me just talk about how does the business model canvas allow you to test your assumptions if you're starting a venture, right? So what this framework does is that it just kind of isolates the various things that you need to prove to yourself and to the marketplace, before you can say that, oh, I'm succeeding. So for example, if you're starting a venture, you will say, okay, I need to understand that whatever I'm proposing as value, the value proposition is something that will work with my customer segment. And this is my customer segment. And this is the kind of relationship. It will be a subscription relationship, for example, that I'll have with the customer. And this will be the way in which I'll earn revenues. And this will be my channels of distribution. And this will be my cost structures. And this will be my key partners that I will go with. And then you suddenly realize that once you look at this beautiful sort of diagram, which you can easily download from Google, if you just type business model canvas, you'll see how it works. You will understand that all of the things that I just said, the boxes that I was just talking about, the value proposition, the segment, the relationships, are all based on assumptions. And then that kind of takes most people who are starting a venture by surprise, because they're so convinced about their own idea, about their venture, that they kind of take it for granted that their truth is the whole world's truth. But once you actually list out your assumptions and you start trying to prove them in the marketplace in a way that doesn't really hurt you, so you don't put in a lot of money to figure out, to build the product before you have figured out what your customers are or what the relationship is, you're on a much better ground. I'm not saying that this is 100% good. I'm not saying that this is something that will make sure that every venture that goes through a business model canvas is going to be successful. But at least you know the assumptions you're making and you're testing them out so that you're minimizing the damage that you're doing for yourself. And that minimization of damage is absolutely critical when we are very enthusiastic about a new venture or a new project. And this kind of helps you nail those things down and maybe tempers your enthusiasm. Now, I'm not trying to be a killjoy over here, but a lot of times what tends to happen is that when you're testing these assumptions out, you find some new truths and you will what they call pivot to a new idea, or you say, oh, okay, it doesn't work this way with this customer or with this, but it might work in some other way. And that is the biggest beauty of using a framework like this for testing out assumptions, which may or may not actually be absolutely critical for you. So there might be some things which are absolutely critical, but there might be some things which are complete waste of time. So this is a good framework within which you can actually test out your assumptions. So I thought I'll take it forward a little and just bear with me, just see how it goes with you on this one. I thought to myself, if we can do this about a new venture, can we not actually kind of make this more formal about especially our work relationships or even the projects that we are doing? A lot of times we start off on trying to build a sales account or, set up a relationship with our boss, or maybe even look at starting a project with a team. And now obviously abstract factors come into, being, because, you're talking about different people, their motivations, agendas, and so on and so forth. And this is where we make the same mistake. We believe that everyone's on the same page, everyone wants the same results. And maybe the assumptions you're making that everyone wants your product and why won't people? So then you are in a situation where you have automatically compromised your ability to succeed. So why not actually list down your assumptions in projects or even in relationships with your boss or your peers or your colleagues or important clients or important suppliers, and test them out. And suddenly you will figure out, okay, so this is not working with my boss or this is not working with this team, but maybe something else will. But unless and until you kind of write out your assumptions before you begin work, you will not be able to minimize damage for yourself. Now, this is a very critical skill, I think, because this skill will help all of us who are extremely enthusiastic by nature to kind of also look at that enthusiasm and give it direction and maybe give it a dose of reality. That doesn't mean you sort of don't be enthusiastic about life. This is just a way in which you can have a better idea, maybe a better idea than the idea that you have got about whether it's a person or whether it's a project or whether, it is any relationship that is going to impact your career. So assumptions it is. I hope that you will, next time when you start some project or some relationship, just get out your notepad or maybe just write on your phone all the assumptions you're making and make sure that you correct them once you test them out, because that's what we do with a hypothesis. That's not a theory. That is proven yet. I hope you like this episode of Smarter with Sid. Many more to come from where this came from. And hey, if you like me, I'm the Traveling Professor. I'm on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And I guess if you like, podcasts like these, you can make a hypothesis about all the other podcasts that IVM's got, and they are true. They are amazingly good. On that happy note,